Hi, Josh. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. How did you get into journalism? How did you start your career?
So, the long and short version of the story is I grew up in New York City, obsessed with media, entertainment, film, TV. And when I got to college, I was not a very motivated student, but I was motivated when I found a place at the school newspaper and the school radio station and found that, oh, wait, this is something that I actually have a real passion for and I will put in the work because I love it. And it was kind of off to the races. In college, I was at a small school called Hobart William Smith in upstate New York. And I became editor of the school paper and I hosted a college radio show. And I was like, oh, wait, I'm actually decent at this. And when I put my mind to it, I'm seeing results and I'm feeling satisfaction. And it kind of grew from there. And I can go into as much detail as you like, but like I did internships during school, after school, and then hit the ground running when I got out of college in New York.
And when was your first breakthrough moment?
My breakthrough moment, wow. So there are a bunch of breakthrough moments. If I'm thinking back to my career, so one thing I should mention is like I was a bit of like a youth journalist, for lack of a better term. Like there was an organization called Children's Express that is sadly I think no longer in existence. That my older brother and sister were involved in, and of course, like any youngest of three, I did
Yeah.
everything my older siblings did. And this was this great organization that empowered like 8 to 14-year olds, something like that, to go to these major political events, all sorts of events, and interview relevant folks. So, like the first like big moment, the first moment where I felt like I got the buzz and excitement of what my career would end up being was actually when I was 12 years old at the 1988 Democratic National Convention. I've just dated myself, and I was there interviewing Jesse Jackson and Senator Paul Tsongas and Senator Paul Simon at the time. And it was such a buzz and a rush. I was part of something bigger than myself. And I felt like this is, I'm not sure I intellectualized like what it meant, but it was just very powerful and exciting to be a part of something that was bigger than my world as a 12-year-old. Now, marrying that then with my passion and love for entertainment and movies and TV and comedy, that's kind of like the secret sauce I think that ended up being my career.
Do you think there are moments, like, if you look back on it, do you think there have been moments you've been more nervous than when you were a 12-year-old? Because as a 12-year-old, you're like, I don't really know exactly what's going on here.
That is a great point. And when you put it that way, you're absolutely right. I think I absolutely have more nerves, honestly, now, having done this for 20 plus years, than I did when I was a kid. I didn't know any better. I mean, yeah, it was big and weird and exciting, but people often ask me, like, do you still get nervous? Are you nervous when you're interviewing, a giant movie star or whatever? Truth is, absolutely, I do. I truly do. And I think that's what keeps me good. I think that keeps me on edge. That's why I over prepare. It's why I stay in the moment, because I know it is very fleeting. And if I'm not on my A game, that live event, that conversation is going to just go off the rails. So a little fear is good, and I think it's true. It's like the same kind of conversation I have with entertainers and actors and directors. You want to stay scared. You want to stay a little bit. That's going to keep you sharp in any field, and it certainly has been the case for me.
Yeah. So I read in one of your interviews where in 2006 you went to MTV, and that's when they started sending you to red carpets and all of that. So what was that like?
Sure. So yeah. So jumping ahead. So I get out of college. I've been doing these internships. My first job out of school was as a producer for the now unfortunately infamous Charlie Rose. So I was a producer for Charlie Rose, who was a great interviewer and not the best gentleman, unfortunately, to say the least. But it was a huge opportunity for me in my young career, and for many people. I still am friends with a lot of people that worked at that. What was a great show. Again, not fronted by a great man, but a great show. So I worked there for 4 years as a producer. We're in the ins and outs of booking and prepping and what went into crafting a great interview, an extended, thoughtful conversation. Now, my vibe couldn't be more different than Charlie Rose's vibe, but I saw the work that went into it. I saw the research that went into it, and I saw that to have a great conversation, it's a combination of being insanely well prepared and also being willing to kind of go with the flow and being in the moment. So that has served me well in the many years since then. So yes, sorry to answer your question. I bounced around for a few years after my first job. I worked at a few magazines. I worked at Us Weekly, an interview magazine, and I worked at a couple infamously catastrophic talk shows. I worked for the John McEnroe talk show, which was like the lowest rated late night talk show in the history of mankind, I think. And then out of all that, of all things, I got my dream job, which I didn't know was my dream job at the time, through a listing on mediabistro.com. I didn't know anybody. This was just like a cold call application for a job at MTV. It was the coordinating editor of MTV Movies Digital. And at that time, that simply meant kind of like coordinating what their editorial coverage of movies would be on the website. They liked a blog I was doing for fun, again, to date myself. And they took a shot on me. And I was hired in 2006 at MTV with no intention of doing the interviews myself, at least from their vantage point. And I didn't really even have a secret dream of that. That wasn't like I was trying to slyly get in around. But within about a year, they started to use me on camera doing conversations. My first interview for MTV was when Kurt Loder, the great Kurt Loder, I think he was sick that day or something. He couldn't do an interview with John Travolta for the classic movie Wild Hogs. Yes, what a gem. But hey, it got me my start. All of a sudden, I was sitting like knee to knee in a small studio at MTV with Hollywood icon John Travolta. To your earlier question, was I nervous? Hell yeah, I was nervous. And I got through it though. And, nearly like we're getting towards 2 decades of work at MTV. I'm still there, still doing carpets. And it's been truly a privilege to be the kind of the face of their movies coverage for so long.
Have you ever had an answer in any interview, an answer that's changed how you are as an interviewer or just your process? Like it was so profound or weird or good or awkward that you're like, I will make changes.
I wish I had a specific answer. What I would say is what I've learned in conversations and what I like out of a conversation is I see no point in doing conversations with folks where I already know the answer. Now, there's a little bit of business you have to do to, in my job, to convey what the project is about. And sure, that's just part of the job. But there's so many podcasts, there's so many interviewers out there. I don't need to tell the same story with my conversation as everybody else. So I'm not sure if this is really answering your question, but what I learned is I need to always dig deeper. I need to always find a different angle in, and I need to find my specific angle in, or else I'm going to be bored. And if I'm bored, the audience is going to be bored. So I'm the first audience for a conversation. So that has served me well. So when I approach a conversation, I'm really thinking about like what legitimately I want to know, as opposed to a fun story I've heard that I want to hear them regurgitate again. I think that's lazy and serves nobody.
Well, I think that's spot on too, because unless somebody's a returning champion, right, you only get one opportunity. You were talking about being in the moment. You only get one opportunity. You might as well ask whatever you'd like.
Totally. And I think one of the true privileges of sticking around as long as I have is, I mean, yes, there's that one opportunity thing, but there's also the opportunity of somebody when I've done multiple interviews with people and sticking around as long as I have, I've earned the trust of so many people, these foolish actors and filmmakers who put their trust in me. But like, in all seriousness, they do trust me, and I can, call them out. I mean, that might sound a little harsh, but like I can bring up failures and not be afraid to, because they know it's with love and they know it's with passion and respect. I just did a conversation 2 nights ago, one of my live events with Emily Blunt, And I adore Emily Blunt. Who doesn't love Emily Blunt? I'm probably the only journalist in the last year of Oppenheimer Press that brought up Gulliver's Travels and The Wolf Man with Emily Blunt. And it was in good humor, but it was a legitimate question. It was, learning from failure as much as from success. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that, and I get that. But that only comes with experience and trust. And, I've been lucky enough to do many conversations with her. I don't know if I would have done that the first time around or if I would recommend doing that the first time around.
Yeah.
But that's the privileged position I'm in.
That's also something. How is it different interviewing someone for the first time versus the 5th or the 10th time? And also because you mentioned it earlier when you were talking about Shorty Rose, but also because you are probably one of those few interviewers who is always asking something different and getting a different answer. It never feels repetitive of all the movie press interviews that you do. So how do you navigate that?
Well, I appreciate that, first of all. I think, I always joke, and it's only I'm only semi-joking when I say this, my greatest asset is my competition. A lot of the folks that do movie interviews and film TV interviews, nice people, they're reading from a card. They're not in the moment. They're not talking to people like human beings. I often say, if I have a superpower, it's as awestruck as I am, as intimidated as I am, I talk to everybody the same way. I'm talking to Angelina Jolie like I'm talking to you. I'm talking to Gary Oldman like I'm talking to you or my family or whatever. I'm just I have a ability or whatever to disarm folks. Ha, the fools again. But and I think it's also built on a basis of knowing your stuff. A lot of people don't know film history, TV history, the careers of the folks they're talking to. So that again, is a huge asset, and there's no shortcut to that. I've been living and breathing the subjects I'm talking about my entire life, so it allows me to go back to what I was saying earlier of being so in the moment. If you have that base of knowledge of the past of their career and film and TV, then I can zig and zag. When something comes up, I can reference other things. I can follow their references. And if you don't have that, if you are just the latest, not to disparage, but whatever, Access Hollywood correspondent that is only seen movies the last 5 years, you're not going to be able to keep up and just go with the flow. So that's probably not an answer to your question, but that's where my brain took me.
Yeah, no, it is.
You need to know wild hogs. If you don't know wild hogs, you're deficient.
No, it sounds crazy, but it's absolutely true.
Same thing also, to interject, I mentioned in a text to somebody the movie Las Vegas for some reason yesterday.
Sure.
And I was like, why did I remember this?
Yeah.
So why did I watch it?
A spate of Vegas movies, old people movies. Yeah. What a time to be alive. Yeah.
I remember, I have so many pop culture moments where somebody asks me, hey, because I am that kind of cinephile and I'm that kind of movie buff that I would know everything. So if anyone has any questions, they're like, hey, what's that movie that Taron Egerton was in? I'm like, Kingsman. Oh, what's that show he did on Apple TV? Blackbird? I haven't seen Blackbird, which I'm ashamed of, but I haven't seen Blackbird, but I know Blackbird.
Yes. Well, that's half the battle, and don't shame yourself because this is my job and I feel like I am constantly behind on everything. And it's just, as we well know, there's just too much of everything.
There used to be 600 shows. How do you can't watch 600 shows. You're only one person.
And I'm so, I get bitter when I love talking about film because I love film and I grew up with film and it's the best medium as far as I'm concerned, but also it takes me 2 to 3 hours to watch the content. And if I'm interviewing a new showrunner or actor and I just did Masters of the Air and I love that cast, amazing, fantastic. I also have to watch 9.5 hours of TV for it. So that's guys, come on.
Okay. So my next question is, jumping a little bit to Comedy Central and After Hours. Did you write all of After Hours? all the sketches of After Hours?
I can't take credit for writing it entirely.
Okay.
It is my baby. I love it.
Okay.
I had a couple very key collaborators. So After Hours was my comedy, my first foray into kind of professional comedy, if you want to call it that. I don't know. Again, the insanity, arrogance of youth, whatever. So I'm at MTV. I'm doing these conversations, and I truly wish I could remember how or why this happened, but we were our first After Hours segment ever was with the great John C. Reilly. He's promoting a film called Cyrus, Duplass brothers film, really good movie, and me and a friend of mine named Joel Hannock, who co-wrote a lot of After Hours with me over the years. Um, uh, we came up, I believe, with this idea called Up Close, which was a very silly, stupid idea. And I ended up doing it probably half a dozen times over the years. And it was a conversation, and it was kind of a sight gag where like you would start the conversation on my face very close, welcome to Up Close with John C. Reilly. And then you would go wide and realize like we are like in some insanely like physically intimate space. And we would just have kind of like a semi-normal conversation while kind of like moving in different configurations. I did this with Steve Carell, Jim Carrey, Mike Birbiglia, and Ira Glass. That was an odd one. Some very interesting ones. Yeah, and we just started kind of making up as we went along. And it was a really like creatively such a rewarding pursuit. And yes, Joel helped with a ton of them. A young woman named Sammy Heller helped with a ton. My go-to editor at MTV, CJ Smith. I want to give credit to everybody because it wasn't just me, certainly. But you know, yes, a lot of I will happily take credit for most of the main insane ideas, and then they helped build the world with me. And they were, I mean, you know, doing sketches with like Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg and Tom Hiddleston and Benedict Cumberbatch, like it doesn't get any better. Like making those folks laugh and like just playing with them in that kind of absurdity.
Yeah.
The best.
So, getting punched in the stomach by Benedict Cumberbatch, in a pillow fight with Tom Hiddleston where he breaks your glasses and breaks the bottles on your back, and Elizabeth Olsen like blowing off your head with magic hands.
Yeah.
What would you rather have like them do again?
Oh my god!
And also Jessica Chastain and Tom Hiddleston kissing you on the cheek.
Just that sketch is one of my favorites. That was for a movie called Crimson Peak. Yeah. Didn't get enough attention, but the sketch was so amazing. That came together so at the last minute. I can't even tell you. Like we wrote that in like 2 days prior, found the location, and yeah, that had a guy dressed in all leather, crazy dancing, Tom Hiddleston crying in a mirror, giving this like impassioned monologue, Jessica Chastain threatening to put her hand all the way down my throat. Wow, that's like top 5. That's top tier After Hours for me. That's as good as it gets. My folks shot it so well. It was just everything about it was perfect. But you have touched on, and thank you for doing your research or knowing my stuff. It's very flattering. But you have touched on like a motif. Like if you've seen enough of them, like there are certain wells I go back to. And again, put me on the couch, call up my psychiatrist. But I have been abused physically, emotionally, etc., in so many different ways by the biggest movie stars on the planet. Yeah. I think also like I give off whatever. I'm non-threatening, and they like to kind of like F with me a little bit, you know, in conversations anyway. So I've kind of built on that. Like every time I interview Mark Wahlberg, I'm seeing Mark Wahlberg next week. Actually, he's doing the podcast, and I guarantee he's gonna like manhandle me and push me around, and I'll happily take it because that's just who I am, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, you know, after some experience, either if you've known the person or if you've seen their other work, you know who's in on a joke, right? You know that John C. Reilly is happy to be 6 inches apart from you, or whoever it is, right? So you can kind of build off of who you're talking to, right?
Yes, well, that has come. Look, I didn't know that for John C. Reilly. That's why it was so insane at the time, right? Like, I didn't really know him, and I was a publicist for John C. Reilly, bizarrely taking a chance on me. So credit to that man.
Wonderful.
But you're right. Like as the years go by, like I totally like know everyone's vibe. I know who's game for what. Like there was, I tell this story sometimes where one of the heartbreaking moments for After Hours in the early years was when, like, sometimes like the information and the script wouldn't get to the talent, the actual person, right? Because there are these layers. There's publicists and studio publicists and personal publicists. So you're like, nowadays I have a lot more personal relationships, but back then I was like really going through different avenues. Yeah. And we had pitched a sketch to do with the great Gary Oldman, like one of my like all-time favorites. And he walked into the room for a very forgettable movie called Red Riding Hood. And I'm sure he wasn't happy to be there because it wasn't a movie that anybody was particularly proud of. And the studio or someone had approved the sketch. And all I remember is we had a piñata up and all these crazy props. And Gary Oldman walked into the room and I just saw his face sink and just basically he like tried to go with it. Like he was like, and then like 5 minutes in, he's like, I don't have the heart to do this. And it was tragic for me at the time. It was like disappointing one of my idols. And thankfully, again, if you follow my stuff, I did a recent event with Gary and it couldn't have gone better. We're good. I think he's forgotten, or he at least is professional enough not to mention it. But yeah, there definitely been hiccups along the way when the right information didn't get to the right talent.
This is an interesting question for this. When it comes to the behind the scenes and the booking of this, has there ever been a team, a publicist, or anyone who's like, no, we don't want our person to commit fake violence toward Josh?
Oh yeah, 100%. You guys only see the stuff that's approved. Like for every person that says yes, 5 people say no and 5 concepts are rejected. Like, yeah, it's people always like to think like Josh can talk to anybody and get anybody to do anything. It's like you're seeing after all the back and forth. Yeah.
See, that's fair, because if I was ever doing this, and in a previous life I did experiential, I did gigs and a lot of stuff, but if I ever got to a point where 100% of the time people had no inhibition about doing that, I'd be like, is that a good or a bad thing?
Right, exactly. Then you're not pushing it hard enough. Yeah, you got to go harder. Yeah, exactly.
When you were beginning your career, how important do you think it was to be attached with a company or a brand such as MTV to get guests and celebrities that you interview now? Because I think now with the podcast and now, like as you have mentioned, you've established that relationship.
Right.
How was it?
No, you're spot on there. I think I had a huge advantage because kind of my first job, yes, I'd been behind the scenes at talk shows and magazines, but the first time I was on camera, I had that MTV mic flag, and that was huge. And that is a brand that while isn't what it was in 1987, still means something to a lot of people, and still did when I was starting. So yeah, the first 5 or 10 years, like I was definitely coasting on access and an entry point thanks to the company I was a part of. So, it's a hard thing to do, like when folks are asking for advice, right? Like, admittedly, it would be hard to recreate what I did without the association of a brand. Maybe a little easier now because there's obviously more access and anybody can start a YouTube channel, etc. But to get access to talent at the start, yeah, that was MTV. All credit being to MTV to get me in the door, and then all credit to me. I'll take the credit for what I did. For what I did with it, and I'm hugely proud of that, and hugely proud that like at this point in my career, as many folks I think know me for Happy Sad Confused, which is totally mine, as opposed to MTV, which is obviously not.
Yeah.
If we had a soundboard, Vanshika, like this would be that moment where we'd have like a sound just for when we absolutely love it when people actually do take credit and aren't humble.
Oh no, boo! I'm ashamed of myself. I can't believe I did that.
No. I once in a while, right? There's a balance to it. You can't be humble 100% of the time, Josh.
Yeah.
I am awesome, guys. If there's one thing you take away from this, I'm killing it.
What's the rejection you faced that you were like, this breaks my heart? Not the Gary Oldman one, but more serious than that?
Yeah. I mean, I faced every kinds of rejection in my career. I can't even tell you. I've been laid off from jobs. I have pitched shows that have been rejected. I think I have had in the history of The Rock's career, the only show he has ever attached himself to as an executive producer that did not get made. It was a huge moment for me. I do have a relationship with The Rock, and he's been very kind to me in my career. And he was attached as executive producer of a movie talk show that I was going to do. And at the time, it was for MTV. We made an announcement like we were gonna, all systems go.
Yeah.
It fell apart. Just fell apart for all the reasons that so many projects fall apart. So yeah, I've shot pilots, etc. I've had different dreams dashed along the way and had to adjust kind of expectations, considering like what the industry is into. But I'm definitely more at peace, I think, with kind of the ups and downs now. I mean, I don't know, talk to my wife. Maybe I'm lying to myself right now. But I think I am because I've experienced enough success and failure to know in the wash, it's going to be fine.
Yeah. What do you think you would have done if you were not a journalist? What would it have been another career path?
Well, I think there's definitely a version of me that would have gone down the journalism path, not in the entertainment side. I mean, I remember there was kind of a fork in the road early on when I was choosing between internships and I was considering working at the Columbia Journalism Review, which would have been a much different kind of path. And, I was and am interested in politics, and I was a political science, major for a time before I switched to English. So like there's that. And then if you go back further, I mean, obviously I want to be the Yankees play-by-play announcer. That was like my first dream. I was a baseball obsessive. So yeah, but there's not like a totally left field job. It's all kind of like media adjacent, or also, I mean, certainly interested in writing. My brother's a very successful screenwriter in his own right, and certainly I had different dreams and ambitions in that realm, and I've been able to kind of like satisfy that thanks to After Hours and other things in different ways.
Yeah. When is your brother coming on your podcast?
He has been on the podcast. It was actually a very sweet and sad moment. My brother was on my podcast. My dad passed away a couple years ago, and so I had my brother on after my dad passed away, and we reminisced about our dad was like a huge movie lover and was a big influence in our lives. So we chatted about that.
Amazing. When you interview celebrities, when you were first starting, I have to go back to when you were first starting, because now that you've established these relationships, it's probably not the right question, but when you were first starting, what would you do when there was a dry conversation, or when the celebrity or the guest was not engaging in enough, or was just giving one-liner answers without naming names, of course?
No. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be restricted to the early days, because it still happens. And I'm still talking to people that I haven't talked to, or everyone's human. Everybody has different days and moods and whatever. And a huge part of the job for me, I feel like I can sense from the first minute of a conversation, like, okay, what's this going to be? What's the vibe? Like, it's really reading the room and reading their energy. And you can dictate it only so much. You kind of have to like follow. Do they have a sense of humor about themselves? Are they funny? Do they want to have like a really deep, soulful conversation? So again, it's kind of like having all the tools in your toolkit to be able to go any which way. Because if you're only, funny man, if you're only serious man, like I like people for a while, I think had trouble early in my career, and to a degree, maybe sometimes still, publicists don't know. Some people view me as like a comedy kind of interviewer. Some people view me as kind of like a more, sometimes a more thoughtful conversationalist. The truth is I'm both. And like, it really depends on the guest and the mood and the day and the project. And, people want to put you in a box. And like, I'm really as passionate about doing comedy sketches as I am doing like a career thoughtful conversation with Gary Oldman. So like, that's behooved me well, but it's also sometimes been a challenge in kind of like conveying that to folks on the other side. Again, I feel like I went off a tangent that didn't answer the question. But
No, I think that answers the question, because when you're prepared, then you know that you can go in multiple different directions with someone. I think this is really an exercise in being reactive and in
Yeah.
understanding where someone would like to go with you. One of the things that I do is I might, in 45 minutes, I might only get to ask 3 questions. I might have to ask 30. I don't even know how quickly you're going to answer a question. So I have to have something in the chamber, right? So
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I almost think like this process is, it's antithetical to be a good interviewer. It's almost antithetical to being a good human, because you're always constantly thinking and not really listening, but you are listening.
Yeah. It's yes. All of that. It's definitely, it's why like I need a nap after like a long conversation. It sounds crazy, but it is so mentally exhausting because I have to be like so sharp, and you have to, yeah, you're juggling different balls in the air, especially when you're doing live events, especially when I'm on that stage at 92nd Street Y, and you're really as much having a conversation for the audience as a conversation with the person with you, and you want to keep them engaged and entertained. So it is, I mean, like that being said, like, yeah, like when young interviewers, hosts, journalists ask me advice, like it's always 2 very simple things. It's like, know your subject and be in the moment and listen. And I think they're equally very important. I know I've already kind of said that, but like anybody can write a good question down on a card. Like anybody can do that. Like and that's important. That's good. But not anybody can lock eyes with somebody and listen and think of how to bring something more out of that answer. And to your point, yeah, I over prepare and I have 5 pages of questions, but who cares if I end up asking 7 questions in an hour? That's totally fine. I'd rather that in a way, because that means we went off on tangents and we dug in a little bit deeper.
Well, that process is needed to make you feel comfortable in it, right? We all have different things that are going to make us feel comfortable. When you are looking at an audience, so when you mentioned if you're doing this live and you have a live audience, I ask this question occasionally because I usually get an absolutely different answer every time. The percentage of time you're looking at the audience for the cues versus you're looking at the guest for the cues.
I wouldn't differentiate it, because it's kind of everything at the same time. I'm feeling the audience in the room. I'm not looking to them. I'm feeling their energy. I'm hearing them, because as you guys probably know, like on the stages, you can't often even see them very well. So it's really like, it's auditory. It's kind of like feeling that energy, feeling how they're responding, and it's really rewarding. It's something I've like built only through repetition, is how to work with an audience, like, and how to kind of like feed off of them, interact with them to a degree, and get them like on board with a conversation. And it's something that's very satisfying. Like I didn't, I'm not like a stand-up. I'm not like that's not necessarily my skill set, but that's part of it. And that's part of it that's really still growing for me the last few years as I do more and more live events. That being said, like your number one, who you're talking to, you gotta, that if you lose them, it's all done.
True.
How do you feel after an interview, after a successful interview?
Well, good addendum to that, because
Yeah.
often I feel disappointed generally in myself. My default is like, honestly, I'm my own harshest critic, and I think the best people in every field are like, right. Yeah, like you nitpick, I also end up, because I'm looking at the edits, I'll see it again, so I'm tortured in that way too. See, like, oh, I could have gone there at this point, but I do allow myself joy and happiness, and especially, I feel exhilarated and exhausted after one that worked, and like, you're talking to me, luckily, after a couple really good ones. The Emily Blunt live conversation was fantastic, and thanks in no small part to her being just like a beam of light in the universe, and the audience being into it, and coming off that stage, it's a high, and that's definitely something you chase the next time around. And it's why you're so disappointed when, for whatever reason, and it could be so many different things out of your control. I did an event for Masters of the Air recently, which was good. And I think I mentioned this somewhere on social media, so it's not like inside baseball, I can say it, but 30 minutes into this is an hour-long conversation with Austin Butler, Barry Keoghan, huge cast, amazing. person walks out on stage, a PA walks out on stage with a card for me that says, FYI, the first 20 minutes of audio was not recorded.
Not recorded, yeah.
So my job there is to absorb that and keep going and not betray that I'm dying inside.
Yeah.
And I was miserable that night. I was miserable the next day, miserable for a couple days. And I had to just kind of power through and make sure the audience didn't feel any of that. And my guests didn't feel any of that. And that's when you earn your money. That's when you really have to be a professional.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we all feel that, Josh. We know
I'm
that.
sure you guys do. It's happened to all of us in different ways, right? 100%. Yeah.
I have had moments where everything cuts out. I'm like, oh no, the guests might think I'm gone. Now I'm doing the final 40 minutes on my phone, but it's like on a weird tilt, so they see me on an angle, and I'm like, but just try and pretend like I'm a normal human the whole time. Yeah. The good news is I feel like nobody knows which episode that is, and I will never tell them.
I did an entire podcast conversation over Zoom, I think, with Carrie Coon, and I forgot to hit the record button, and it happens. And she was kind enough to do it all over again, which was not ideal, but very sweet of her.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I asked that question because I want to get into journalism and be a journalist and all of that. But at the same time, when I interview people, after I interview them, I'm just like, I don't know how I feel about this. And watching yourself and listening to yourself again is such a, as you said, torture, because you're your own worst critic, also the best critic, because you find the places where you were like, oh, I could have said this or I could have improved here. But that's sort of also going down a rabbit hole.
It is. You have to find the balance, right? Because I truly do believe that. Look, I would love the superpower of someone that didn't care and kind of just let it all roll off your back and on to the next and whatever. But the truth is, I truly believe in all of these fields that we're talking about, whether it's in front of the camera, behind the camera, whatever. The ones that are tough on themselves are the best. Now, that being said, we can't kill ourselves. We can't beat ourselves up. It's too much. And I've been victim to it. And there's no easy answer, but a fair, healthy amount of self-criticism is going to make you better. But you just can't let it debilitate you.
Yeah. What do you enjoy more when researching? You mentioned movies are shorter and then you'd rather have that. But I also noticed that, by the way, just 1 second.
Oh my gosh, I'm scared. I'm excited and
scared.
I have no idea what's going on too.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So, when you read this thick of a book, do you enjoy reading more, or do you enjoy, would you rather enjoy this man's all movies or all the movies that he has done in all of his 85 years, or would you rather enjoy reading the book?
Again, being super truthful, the movies, the TV, the film work, it takes more time to read the book. I'm not a slow reader. I'm an average reader, but I love consuming, and I hate saying consuming media. It takes all the fun out of it. But I love this stuff, but there are only so many hours in the day, guys. And that one in particular. I love Patrick Stewart. I grew up crazy Star Trek Next Generation fan. The fact that Patrick Stewart knows who I am is insane to me. But yeah, when it came time to prep it and I was procrastinating and I'm like, oh, I have this 500-page book that's going to take me all week to read, as opposed to watching the movie and knowing his career kind of off the top of my head anyway. So I'm happy I read it. It's a good book. But just being truthful, because look, there is no interview, especially for the podcast I prepare for, that will take less than 8 hours to prepare. Even somebody I know backwards and forwards. And I just threw that number out there. But the point is there's nobody I'm winging it for. So that's just 8 hours plus the 10 hours and 20 hours of reading the material. So it's just high volume. I usually do now 2 podcasts a week. I'm doing stuff for MTV, and it's a lot.
Talking about that, how do you manage MTV, 90 Second, Happy Sad Confused, replying to your own emails, and then being here? How do you manage all of that?
I mean, the truth is I love all this stuff. I love to be busy. I'm not good not being busy. Um, and I probably should and need to, as I age, like find a balance a little bit better. But I would rather be overwhelmed than underwhelmed. And, I also like, sorry for the sirens in New York.
No, that's a good backdrop.
Yeah.
That's how we know you're in New York.
Exactly.
Yeah, legit. Yeah, that's like
gritty.
midtown angry sirens coming at me. No, what was I gonna say? Being busy and overwhelmed. I'm more productive when I'm overwhelmed in a weird way. It doesn't let me procrastinate. And I go in waves. Like there's times where I'm burnt out and I just need to like decompress. But yeah, like I'm the guy that like, my most, I don't know what this says about my character. Like the week between like Christmas and New Year's is like, I'm like dying. Like, where's everybody? Like, I need to talk to somebody or do something. And I'm like, I love my family and I love spending time with my family. I love vacations and traveling. But after 3 or 4 days of that, I'm like, all right, what's the next thing? Bring it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Josh, can you set a debate for me? Because when we were talking about this, I was thinking about, is listening to a book on Audible reading?
Oh, you know what? Could you say I read this book if you've just listened to it on Audible?
Correct. Without giving
No.
them the context.
No.
Thank you.
No.
Yes. That's all I needed.
This wasn't with me. This was like,
No,
I wasn't
this is-
involved in this.
She's like,
no,
I
but
read. Just for the record,
she's
I
like,
read.
I am on board with this. No, it's funny because like there's a long running debate in a lot of circles I'm in where it's like, well, you just listen to it on Audible, like go on a long car drive. Also, for anybody who's outside of New York, like I'll be on a call with somebody in New York and they'll be like, well, do you need to pull over? I'm like, no, I live in the Midwest. This is all we do. We're like, oh, I have to drive 2.5 hours somewhere. Okay, let's knock out 3 calls. But yes, I think that's accurate. That being said, it is a nice shortcut.
It is, and I am the weird psychopath that like I don't listen to books. I don't listen to like Audible or anything like books on tape. But I do. I have no music on like my phone. Yeah. I just have podcasts. I only listen. I listen to conversations. I run almost every day, and I'm listening to a podcast. My wife thinks I'm insane, and I'm sure other people do. Literally, I could count on one hand the number of times I've exercised to music.
What do you do?
Shout out. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say. Well, shout out to Megan Thee Stallion because when I go to Planet Fitness after this, again, I will be listening to a podcast, and it might be plain English. Derek Thompson. So I might be doing something super serious, or I might be laughing, and that person's like, "Is that guy doing triceps laughing the whole time?"
You're just laughing at the exercise. Like this isn't even nothing.
It's like, yeah,
laughing it off.
Like,
more weight.
Like, he's just skipping leg day and laughing about it. What's wrong with him?
I was gonna say, what do you do when you get nervous? Because I was literally just listening to music before this because I was nervous and excited about this conversation. So what do you do?
What do I do? The truth is, the best solution for getting over nerves is feeling I'm prepared. Like if I feel like I have too many questions, too many topics, too much, then I'm generally going to feel better about the situation and I'm going to feel good. If like truly my greatest fear still, and it's like never happened, maybe it's happened twice, is having too much time with somebody and not enough stuff to talk about, like running out of questions or topics.
Yeah.
Like that is truly like a fear to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been doing this 25 years. Like it's insane. I know what I'm doing. I can riff with people. I'm fine, but it doesn't go away.
Well, it would be awkward if you're in an interview and then about 39 minutes in like this, you would just go, "Hey Josh, what do you want to talk about?"
Yeah. Well, no, and it happens. It happens where like, but it does happen, by the way, where like, even recently where I've just run out of stuff and then I'm just like, okay, this is I preach to stay in the moment. Let's see what you can do, Josh. You're in the moment. Have a conversation like a normal human being. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you came up with Watch Along, which is a part of Happy Sad Confused. Mm-hmm. How did you what was the idea generation process for that.
So Watch Along is something that I've done 6 episodes for. Hopefully I'll do some more, and really proud of it. It's a nice little like kind of extension of it. So it's essentially inspired by, I grew up, as you might expect, huge cinephile, love DVD filmmaker commentaries, like obsessed. They're not made that much anymore. Pretty rare. Obviously DVDs barely exist, and then on streaming services they barely do commentaries. So it was partially born of like, this had been in my mind for a while, like having conversations with actors or filmmakers while watching a piece of content. Again, content. I have to stop saying content. Art, great art. But it was also born of the strikes, and trying to be a little bit more inventive of what I could do with filmmakers when the actors were on strike. So initially it was intended, actually, I was going to do it with actors, and I still might. But it lends itself so well to filmmakers who are really prepared to do the deep dive. We watch the movie the entire time. And look, the greatest luxury I have in the podcast and a lot of things I do is time. I did junkets for so many years where you would get 5 or 8 minutes with somebody, and that's insane. And you can't have, it's like, I admire the folks that are able to like create something out of that. It is very challenging. So this is just the ultimate extension of that. Like podcast, 45 minutes, great. I'll see you, and I'll do 3 hours with the director of John Wick Chapter 4 and just have a conversation for 3 hours. Like that's like, again, kind of like leveling up. Like, okay, can I just really go deep with somebody that I love?
Josh, what would you prefer? Would you prefer the 5 to 8 minutes and then you get to leave, or would you prefer the person who's there for 10 hours?
Well, I am so obsessed with the whole junket culture. I don't know if this came up in your research. I co-wrote and created a series called Junketeers with my friend Ben Lyons, who was also part of the junket world for many years. And we did it for Comedy Central, and we did, I think, 8 episodes. And we would tell each other amazing stories and of being in that world with like these journalists from like big and small outlets, and how they all hated each other, and the person that had 6 minutes hated the person that got 8 minutes, and like the talent in the room hated it, and it was just, everything about it was just so weird and silly. So we had to mine it for comedy. And one of my sadness is that we didn't get to make more of them because it was so much fun to do.
Well, it reminded me like when Mark Leibovich talks about like spin rooms in politics too. It's the same thing. It's like, we know what we're going into. We don't like it. We're going to do it.
And nobody, literally, I've had this conversation 1,000 times with actors and filmmakers and publicists and studio folks and folks like me. Everybody hates it. Nobody's figured out how to decimate it and do something different in 40 years. So we're stuck with it.
It's still efficient.
It is.
Unfortunately.
It is. And I just did one. I generally don't. I'm very lucky. I don't have to do them much anymore, but I did one for the new Dune movie, and it was it was Dune, and MTV wanted it. So, and we got like 10 minutes with the talent, which again was more than most people were getting, but like I hated it. Like I know all that talent, like we have good relationships, but I was back like sitting in a hallway outside a hotel room with a timekeeper in a room, and I was nauseous even after doing this all these years. I was like, I am so spoiled. I hate this. Nothing good can come from this.
I deeply feel it, Josh, because I did the inverse as an interviewer, and for multiple brands at big conferences like Adobe Summit and Dreamforce and everything, I would say, no, just put me in a box for 8 hours and I will just let the other people come in. Like, what if it's a reverse junket and then they get to leave? So I was like, let me be the pain sponge, and I will take in all of this. And then I was like, this was a very poor idea on my part. It worked.
You were the pain sponge.
I really was the pain sponge.
A different human being today because of it. I can see it.
I'm forever changed, Josh. Yeah, you can really see the pain in my eyes.
Yeah.
It's an audio-based medium, but you can't see the pain in my eyes, but it's there. You can hear it.
It's the same questions, right? Over and over and over again with the same people. And my biggest beef with... I am so sorry.
No, get it out. Let's get it out. Come on, therapy.
Yes, shots fired. Let's go.
My biggest beef with all these Emmys, red carpets, was why is everyone so obsessed about the candle and the Calvin Klein ad? Like, you can ask better questions.
Oh, right. For Jeremy, yeah.
Ask questions about the work. Why are you so obsessed about the other thing?
I know. It's a no-win situation, though. I do have sympathy for the folks like that, like have like 2 questions, 1 minute with somebody, and a producer telling them we need to get them talking about Calvin Klein. Luckily, I've been very lucky, and MTV, to their credit, has very rarely ever told me you have to ask this question. They've trusted my judgment and trusted no, if I ask that question, that's going to piss them off, and they're not going to talk to you the next time. So play the long game, have a nice, good conversation, and you'll get good stuff for years, as opposed to one quick hit that'll get you a headline.
Yeah.
Well, it's tough to ask a different question though in 10 hours too, because it's almost like that experience turns anyone on the other end into Larry David. They're like, no, I don't.
Yep.
I don't like humans.
No, I don't blame the grumpy actors in that room. I would be, you were the pain sponge,
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. It's almost like you kind of have to know when your time slot is, right? If you know that you're late, I would be thinking about this in reverse. If I'm in hour 8 and I'm from the local affiliate in Des Moines, I'm just gonna go in a completely odd direction because otherwise.
I always liked being the first or the last at a junket. You want to be first when they're fresh, or last when they're totally punch drunk and don't give a crap and they'll say anything.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, there's just that, that high of being like, okay, we're done with Josh. Oh, we're done for the day? This is wonderful.
If I know I'm one of the last or the last, I walk into the room I'm your last one, guys. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a t-shirt cannon.
Totally, basically.
To wrap things up, I will sort of reverse question on you. So
Okay.
I've taken questions from Happy Sad Confused, and you will be answering them.
Oh my gosh.
Yes!
What's the thing you collect?
What do I collect? Oh my god. Oh, I can't believe you're doing this. Well done. What do I collect? I guess I collect movie posters. Very on brand. I've got a good collection of movie posters. Yeah.
Wait, not a movie poster, but I like to show this off.
Is that
Just
Iron Man?
because
What am I seeing? What?
Yeah, wait, you'll see double. It's Iron Man, and now it's not.
I love it.
It's Tony, and then it's Iron Man.
I love it. Respect. I don't have enough wall space. I need more wall space. I truly have an office at MTV solely to put up my posters that I can't fit into my apartment.
Hope I've been dreaming of start collecting DVDs, but at the same time I don't know where I can find them anymore, just because.
I hate that sentence. It's real. It's real.
Try and Vinci, come to the Midwest and try and find the one remaining defunct family video. It exists. It is somewhere. We will find it. That's where they are.
Okay. Yes, I will
It's a worthy quest. Yeah.
I will start that collection. What's your phone's wallpaper?
My phone's wallpaper is my beautiful dog Lucy, who, if you follow me on social media, I'm obsessed.
She's more photogenic than you. That's what you tweeted. Not me saying that.
No, it is not something that could be argued.
Okay. Last person you were mistaken for.
Oh, I don't think have I ever been mistaken for anybody. Well, Anthony Mackie likes to always pretend that I'm Ben Lyons when he sees me, because he knows that we're good friends. So he's always like, Ben Lyons! And I'm like, Anthony, okay, no.
Can I tell you something? I always thought you and Ali Plum, not always, but for a very long time, Ali Plum and you were the same person.
That's so funny. That's a very good one. Thank you. You have a better answer than I do. Ali Plum, who's become a very good friend of mine. Yes, we definitely get a little bit of that. And certainly on social media, there's overlap. And yeah, we posed, I visited London a year or two ago, and we took some photos together. And
wow, really?
Our portion of the internet exploded. Our small little film Twitterverse exploded.
I have to find that now, and I have to see the Junketeers thing. Yes,
we did the Spider-Man meme. We did the pointing.
Nice.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay. Sorry, but for the when I first started watching your videos, I was also watching Ali Plum's videos because to me, you both are my role models, as I mentioned previously, and I was always like, wait. Sometimes Josh Horowitz or Ali Plum has American accent and Josh Horowitz has British accent. What's happening right now?
We're code switching on the situation.
And
it's also the glasses, right? And it's also the fact that
white guys with glasses. That's all we are. That's all we are at the end of the day.
And it's also the fact that you both really ask questions in a very different way and get different answers.
I take it as a compliment. He's great at what he does.
Yeah. Okay. What gets under your skin during interviews?
What gets under my skin during interviews? I would say, well, a general thing with folks I talk to is if I sense they don't have a good sense of humor about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. I need some level of humor, good nature, some perspective. So if I have a sense that you're taking yourself a little too seriously, that's a major turnoff.
Who's been your funniest interview yet?
Oh, I mean, there's too many. I mean, I guess my default ones. I mean, no surprise that Will Ferrell is just one of my favorite. I mean, he just makes me laugh so much. He just has his whole essence. He's one. What are the other funny ones? I mean, like, in the non-comedian like realm, like here are two weird ones, but like they just like amuse me. Like Sam Rockwell, I just find like he's just like a funny, goofy guy. And again, if you follow my work, you might know that I'm obsessed with Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon is insane and scary to most people, and I find him to be hysterical. And I think that's why we vibe, because I just like laugh at everything he does. And yeah, he's phenomenal.
Great answers. Okay. So 2-part question.
Yep.
3-part. Who's an actor that always makes you happy? Or you can also say movie, sad, and confused. Movie. Let's do movies, not actors.
Okay. So just a movie that makes me happy, a movie that makes me sad, a movie that makes me confused.
Confused, yeah.
Okay. I mean, so many in each category. Let's see. Movie that makes me happy, just like off the top of my head. I keep going back to a class. Princess Bride. Princess Bride is just a perfect like blend of genres that just works from my childhood. Let's go with that. Movie that makes me sad. I always think of Terms of Endearment. Watched it on a plane once. I mean, I've watched it many times on a plane. Ugly cried, a mess. The music kicks in like every 15 minutes in that movie, and that theme just like wrecks me. That's a good one. Movie that makes me confused. Oh, Tenet. Ooh. I love Christopher Nolan. I love him. Yeah. I feel horribly saying this. I still don't understand what happened in Tenet. I've given it so many tries. I'm not smart enough for Tenet. Sorry, Chris. I hope he's not listening.
And then there's those other ways to watch it, and then people will tell you, "Well, if you watch it like this," I'm like, "No, that's work."
No, I have this argument with like friends in the business that love Nolan like I do, and it's the one movie of his I just can't figure out.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a long play, and like it will all reveal itself in 20 years.
I hope so. Like end of Usual Suspects, it's all just going to click in 1 second. I'm going to wake up from like sleeping, like I get it. Yeah, I hope so.
It would be an incredible maneuver if somebody was like, "I'm going to create this piece of content. You are going to be confused by it. That's okay, because in this
precisely
movie,
18 years, you will understand it."
In this completely unrelated movie, it's almost like why am I blanking on M. Night movies? But when he obviously
Sixth Sense, Signs, all of them, like the twist at the end.
When he went and brought the story back, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
so,
in the McAvoy one, Split,
Split.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah,
I know movies.
Breaking Glass, all of that. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Now I'm sorry. I'm thinking about that. So you asked this question, what's the worst note a director has ever given you? I'm gonna do you have an answer about like the worst note someone has given you? Because I was gonna switch it up a little bit.
So I go for switching up because I've been pretty privileged. No one's really given me too many notes.
Yeah. So what's the best interview you've had so far in your career?
What? You save that for the end? Oh my God. Best interview. I can't name one. I'm gonna name a few. I'll just rattle a few off.
Three.
Okay, 3. Whew. Let's go recent because I'm really proud of this one, and I watched it back and I'm like, yeah, that was really good. It was the Gary Oldman conversation. I was like really thrilled with the way that went, and it was a marriage of like expectations. Maybe it was partially because of that story I told you about, like disappointing him all those many years ago too, and like, oh, I've redeemed myself. But it was with a legend, someone I revere. And he was to my point earlier, had a sense of humor about himself, humility, but intelligence, and I had some actors in the audience that like all agreed. They're like, oh my God, like that was a masterclass to hear from him. So I'm so happy like it went in that way, and he opened up himself. That's one. I'm trying to think of like one going back a ways. I mean, they're meaningful ones. Like, it was really meaningful for me. I would have to listen back. I wonder how great it is, but it was like meaningful for me to like interview Warren Beatty. This is like a kind of a random one, but like a guy who doesn't do much press, and to like get like an hour with Warren Beatty and like sit in his presence was just like, I one of those pinch me moments. I can't believe I'm here. And it did go well, and he's such a raconteur, and just to get like an hour of his brain was remarkable. And again, a relatively recent one to round out the trio. I interviewed Kate Winslet for the podcast for the most recent Avatar movie, and I mean, just talk about someone that just like, again, there's the talent. So she's one of our best actors on the planet, but also just open and honest, and didn't give a crap about didn't feel like there were guards up. So I felt like I don't know how much of that is to my credit, but she really opened up, and it was meaningful in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Awesome. Your Warren Beatty moment is my moment right now. Pinch
Oh
me.
yeah. Oh my God! Stop it.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Josh.
No, thank you guys. Thanks for the smart questions, and no, and truly for knowing your stuff about my work. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely.